Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes Fantasy Basketball Podcast, hosted by #basketball.com, your home for the very best fantasy tools and analysis on the entire internet. Go check them out, #basketball.com. It is, believe it or not, week 3. And honestly, looking ahead at week 3, like we talked about in week 2, there is not a ton of opportunity to stream this week. We said it in our last go round, Tyler and I, and straight up we have the election on Tuesday, so there are no games at all on Tuesday. I think every team is playing there on Monday, and then Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday are the big days. Like your roster is going to be completely full every single day, just by statistics. Depending on, I mean, listen, if you play in a league with a weird roster, or if you play in a league with a weird bench or not enough bench, then maybe there are some players that you want to stream on, let's just say Sunday. I don't know. But for the most part, right, you will not be doing anything other than dropping some players to play on Thursday and dropping some players to play on Saturday. And it's in times like these, I go to #basketball.com's advanced NBA schedule grid. Like, once again, to me, this is the best tool to plan my week ahead. And so it's very simple. I'm going to probably just do a lot of my streaming Thursday because there are only 3 games. Now, I think this is where it gets a little bit more difficult. I know a lot of people play in leagues with a free agency budget, right? You are going to have to spend more money than normal. You put a 0, a 1, a 2 in there, you're going to have to spend a little bit more money than a couple dollars to get the players that you want this week in order to stream, because everyone's going to be streaming the same, 6 teams on Thursday and 8 teams on Saturday. And chances are there's only going to be about, 3 to 7 players that you would actually want to roster. So if you're in a 10 to 12 team league, that's more players than there are teams. And then certainly those teams aren't doing the thing where they only stream 1 player. So you're gonna have to work for it. And I, quite frankly, don't think there's a lot of good players. Unfortunately, really, there's not a lot of good players sitting on the teams that we do have available for our Thursday and Saturday games. We will start with Chicago. Chances are a majority of the normal players that Chicago is rolling out will already be owned in your leagues. There is a chance that Ayo Dosunmu or Jalen Smith are available. And I mean, I don't love them the most out of this week's potential pickups for Thursday. If you look at the advanced schedule that's in front of you, if you're on YouTube or if you're on the podcast, go to YouTube or just go to the advanced schedule on #basketball and click Thursday. There are 3 teams: the Bulls, the Spurs, and the Jazz, who play Thursday and Saturday. So it's those 3 teams. You can maximize 1 pickup, 2 extra games. That's pretty nice. So if with the Bulls, I think I would actually go with Ayo Dosunmu, even though I think Jalen Smith is probably is currently averaging like 10, 5.5, and less than 1, a half an assist, half a steal. Like, it's not great, but he hits almost 2 threes a game in his limited minutes. And if those minutes pick up a little bit over the course of this week, then Jalen Smith is probably a pretty decent streamer if you need those rebounds. I would rather have Ayo Dosunmu. I think Ayo Dosunmu is more fantasy friendly player. He is across the board playing more minutes than everyone else coming off the bench in Chicago. And I don't love Ayo Dosunmu, but Ayo Dosunmu should be streamed onto a team. I mean, starting if you got room on Monday, because listen, your roster is going to be full on Monday. It's going to be full on Wednesday. Chances are there's a guy who's on your bench who's playing both of those days, but he's going to be on your bench. So if you can shuffle those guys out right away at the beginning of the week, pick up Ayo Dosunmu, I would absolutely do that. Going over to the Spurs, who have a game Thursday and Saturday as well. Jeremy Sochan honestly should be rostered in all leagues. I'm not sure the percentage wise on Yahoo has been going up. He's actually one of the more picked up players over the last few days on what we've seen on Yahoo's statistics. Jeremy Sochan is starting. He's playing, and I do think the time the Sochan has spent working as somewhat of a pseudo point guard last season has made his game a little bit more well-rounded this season. Like Pop is incredibly smart at kind of getting the best out of his players. And I think Jeremy Sochan is making better decisions. And since he's making better decisions on the court, he's staying on the court a lot longer. Over the first 6 games, 17, 8, and almost 3.5 assists. And like 3.5 assists is the second leading assist getter on this team. So obviously Chris Paul is out there, but Jeremy Sochan does end up moonlighting as a point guard. Trey Jones is out, so he does end up moonlighting as a point guard sometimes with the second team. He's shooting over 50%. I don't think that lasts, but I think Jeremy Sochan, if he's on your waiver, to me, that's the number one pickup to maximize your games this week on Thursday and Saturday. I'm willing to put Harrison Barnes on my team. Julian Champagne, I'm willing to have him on the team. Keldon Johnson does score. Like, Keldon Johnson isn't playing the role that he once had on this team, and there is a reason for that, right? He is solid. He's a good player. This team doesn't need his skill set, and also there's better players on this team, quite frankly. Keldon Johnson still does play about 28 minutes a game. He can score in bunches, and he gets good rebounds for somebody coming off the bench. All of the Sacramento, all of the San Antonio Spurs, I like as kind of your number one streaming source this week with the weird schedule that we have going into week 3 due to the election. For the Utah Jazz, which is the last team that has a Thursday, Saturday schedule, Johnny Collins should be owned on every team. And there's a lot of injuries going on all around. And I really think that, man, it's just the injuries have been kind of a giant bummer. I don't know about you, but I'm struggling with the fact that Steph Curry is out. I think there was a lot of value in this draft when it came to guys who get injured. Well, here they are. They're all injured currently. And I think this is an incredibly good buy low situation. If you can get someone like Joel Embiid, Paul George, Steph Curry for 70 cents on the dollar, because all of those guys are going to come back. I'm not trying to run out and get Kawhi Leonard, who's injured, or some of the actual like serious injuries that are out there. It's absolutely a shame what happened to Paulo Banchero, who is having himself a really nice start to the season. I'm hoping Anthony Black can be the correct pickup there in Orlando to replace Paulo Banchero, but I'm not sure they're willing to give Anthony Black the minutes that he deserves. Actually, I think he's really good. I think Anthony Black could be quite a good player in the future. I don't know if this year is it, right? Like, I'm not sure that is exactly what I'd be, I guess, banking on is a quality Anthony Black, um, I guess, couple weeks or month. But in my deeper leagues, I like 12, 14 team leagues, I absolutely am taking a flyer on Anthony Black. I think it's completely worth it. Simply because if the minutes are there and he's trusted to do more, his skill set is very, it's very attractive. I'm not sure why. Um, well, people are talking about Anthony Black. I was like, oh, no one's talking about Anthony Black. People are talking about Anthony Black. Jonathan Isaac is also getting minutes in Orlando, so both of those guys are going to have to step up a little bit more with Paulo Banchero out. But I like Anthony Black's pathway to being competent. He's had a couple of 6 assist games. There's little flashes in here. And we're talking about we're talking about a second year player. We're talking about a 20-year-old. I mean, he is younger than some of the rookies that came into the league last season. Um, he's not going to score in buckets, but his rebound assists like combo, along with the fact that you could be getting a block out of your point guard, is very attractive. And I'm hoping with a little bit more run, a little bit more minutes, his game kind of takes a little bit of a step up. I don't know if this season is the season he will be standard league fantasy relevant, but I think he could be for periods of time standard league fantasy relevant during the season, and I'm hoping here over the next like 4 weeks we see that happen. Right? He's a 6'7" point guard, and it's hard to ignore a 6'7" point guard. Back to the Utah Jazz. I wanted to pull up the Utah Jazz box score from the other evening. And let's pull that up here. Utah Jazz. Probably could have had that. Utah, Hawk, Utah. No, that's a terrible joke. The game it was on Saturday. That's why I'm failing to understand how anything works. With Larry Markkinen out, who should be back somewhat soon, we're seeing Colin Sexton, starting. Keontae George is taking up a little bit more of the scoring um, demands, but they're still not playing like any of the like Patty Mills. Like he got 15 minutes, but like completely like irrelevant, right? I would probably stream Thursday, Saturday if available. Keontae George or Colin Sexton, and I think that's it. I don't think I would lean on really anybody else. Um, I don't think that Johnny Juzang is like gonna break out this week. Like I don't think that's what's happening there. I think he had a very excellent game. He's 23 years old. He had an excellent game against Denver, but it was a blowout, right? And I think that's why those minutes peaked up there in that particular game, and not because suddenly he is going to be leaned on as a injury replacement, either with the starting lineup or the second team. A lot of his minutes came later in this with a lot of those minutes came with the second team. He did not start. It's worth watching to see if that's something Utah goes back to, because they're very thin right now. So take what you can get if you are the Utah Jazz. But Keontae George, Colin Sexton are probably the only two players that I stream from the Utah Jazz. And from those three teams, the Bulls, the Bucks, and the Utah Jazz, those are the ones that I would probably start with because of the Thursday, Sunday, very, very slim back to backs. Um, you got the Bucks, Timberwolves, and Portland also playing on Thursday, and on not Sunday but Saturday, you do have a few more teams: the Nets, the Hawks, and the Clippers, the Raptors, and then the other teams that we mentioned. Oh, the Cavs and the Cavs as well. Unfortunately, with a lot of those teams, right? There isn't a ton of opportunities to stream, in my opinion. I'm not gonna bank on like a blowout, right? And be like, oh, pick up some scrubs off Cleveland because they're absolutely going to smoke the Nets. Like I'm not gonna bank on that fact, right? So I've said this before. I'm gonna say it again with the Clippers. If Norman Powell is available, he should be rostered immediately. I would for Saturday feel very comfortable streaming Terrence Mann if he's not rostered in a particular league. If you're in a 12 or larger league, Chris Dunn has been doing good numbers even in his limited minutes, and the Clippers need bodies, right? So I would feel if there wasn't a great amount of stuff on the waiver wire, Chris Dunn is somebody I would put in that list. And like I was mentioning earlier, the list that you have for these days is going to get ate up real quick. Everybody in the league is going to be trying to. If Keontae George is on your waiver wires, everyone's going to be putting a bid on him, right? So looking at someone like Chris Dunn, who is probably overlooked by some of the more casuals in your league, might be a good way to get ahead if you have him higher in your list, or if you have put a little bit extra money down in order to acquire someone like Chris Dunn, because it is better to get some of these middle tier streamers, like not the great streamers, but the mid tier streamers on a low stream day like Saturday, which only has 4 games. Other than that, week 3 is it's rough. It is an absolutely rough streaming week. Hopefully, and this is what we've heard, right? Embiid, Paul George, and Steph Curry do seem like they will make their way back into some minutes this week. So at least what I'm reading, we'll see, I guess. But the hope is that if you are like me, like myself, got a few teams that are dealing with a few injuries, who are struggling. Like I think I've overplayed a team like 6 or 7 games. Like I played 6 or 7 more games than another squad, and I lost. I'm gonna lose 3-6 in week 2, and losing 3-6 is actually it's rough. Like that's to me like as worse as it should get. Now it's as worse as it should get when I have injuries too. Like it's 2-7 is like just inexcusable to get a 2-7. You can squeak out one of those categories to stay at a 3-6 in a league where you're struggling with injuries. But you're only going to be able to manage a handful of 3-6s, even at the beginning of the season. And all you can kind of do if you're in this particular position is wait it out. I don't believe in selling low with any of those top tier players. Maybe like if you have some mid-tiered injured players, I guess, who would be like Nick Claxton or something like that. Who I think Nick Claxton is back, but he did walk out. Or Brandon Miller, right? You held on to Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller came back, right? I still wouldn't give those guys up either. It's only week 3. If this was kind of the middle of the season, I might say, hey, you can't, if you're in a playoff race, you can't afford to have like a 3-6 here in week 12, week 13. But it's only week 3. Continue to preach here. Do not panic. Everything will revert to its mean. One of a great tweet I saw, I believe it was from, was it Matt Smith? Was it Mark Smith? Who was it? Not sure. I'm not gonna be able to find it. But pointing out that field goal percentage is like historically down for a lot of really, really good players. And to me, that's just a buy low list, right? There's a lot of good buy lows, like field goals percentage for the most part, like 90, 80 some percent of the time will revert back to the mean, especially for players like Dame Lillard, players like Steph Curry, right? Those numbers will bounce back into a range that is more acceptable for their career. So you can trust that. You can absolutely trust that when you are making your decisions to either to pursue someone, a player who's struggling to start the season, which I think you should be doing. You should be sending 70 cents on the dollar trades for good players right this second. Um, Other than the teams that I've mentioned to stream this week and the players that I've mentioned, you could theoretically, depending on how you feel about your week, come Saturday, look towards some of these teams that do have a Saturday, Monday in week 4 is a pretty light week. Nets, Bulls, Cavs, Clippers, and the Spurs. So honestly, that makes those Spurs players even more, in my opinion, even more valuable to get at the beginning of this week, because you're going to get a Thursday, you're going to get a Saturday, and you're going to get the following Monday on week 4. That's 3 extra starts for 1 pickup, 2 of them this week, 1 of them next week. To me, that's an absolute stellar pickup. It's also why Ayo Dosunmu or Jalen Smith would be good pickups. If you don't end up getting your top tier, I mean, you should be setting kind of like a list of, like, in my opinion, 8 or 9, 10 guys, 11 guys, 12 guys to pick up on Monday for your like 2 to 3 streaming spots that you have at the bottom of your bench. If you're in a league where you're like, I can't really drop anybody on my bench because they'll be picked up immediately, then you need to trade. Like, you need to do a 2-for-1 trade. You need to upgrade one of your starters, get rid of some of your quality on the bench, because you can't start all those guys every single night. Yes, they're bringing you value when they rotate in and out, but a good way to kind of gauge that is go out to the advanced schedule that you see on #basketball.com and look at how your players kind of stack up, or just like scroll through your days, right? Notice the player on your bench that you can't sneak in. You have too many guards. You have a guard on your bench that you like, but he never plays, right? What's the point of having a guard on your bench that never plays? Package 2 of those guards to upgrade a forward, right? You should be streaming at least 2 roster spots every single week. And so you should be picking up at least 2 guys here on Monday who will get you an extra start on Thursday or Saturday or Monday. So you could, if you do the Spurs of the Bulls, you can have all 3 of those. The other teams got a Saturday, Monday, back to back into the next week. I highly recommend for everybody to do that back to back Saturday, Monday. Always try to get a back to back player who leads you into next week. It's just kind of especially when that game is a it's a pseudo back to back. Especially when that game is on Monday or even Tuesday. It's really good to kind of like bolster your starts right away so you don't waste a pickup in the coming week. We got a very, very dense week, I think, coming up. We're getting some more games under our belt. We're still in small sample size theater, but we're also starting to see how teams are handling their rotation. We're starting to see how much like bench minutes are being played by certain players, and we're also seeing some some excellent play from guys who we've been keeping our eye on for years, like Jalen Suggs, right? I think if Brandon Miller had a nice little return, I think it's going to be too late to buy low on Brandon Miller. I think Brandon Miller is going to have a stellar year, so I would absolutely try to buy low on Brandon Miller. You pay attention to the various injuries that are going on. So like Peyton Pritchard is playing a lot more minutes with Jaylen Brown out in Boston. He's getting a ton of threes even off the bench when Jaylen Brown is in play. So like Peyton Pritchard doesn't seem like a guy who you would say, oh, should be drafted, should be on a bench. Absolutely should be rostered permanently. Probably even after Jaylen Brown comes back, but that we'll see how well or how often they keep him in the rotation once that team is a lot more healthy. But like, just now is the time to pay attention to players who are kind of coming out of nowhere. Grady Dick is starting in Toronto. A lot of people probably said that wasn't going to happen. I thought that was going to happen in Toronto. It absolutely is. Scotty Barnes being injured, right? There's a lot of exploitation of injuries out there. And I think there's actually quite a few really good players out on the waiver wires. If even in a 14 team league, there's still some quality streams that you can get. But tons of good players out there on the 12 team waiver wire, because once all these guys come back and get healthy, and hopefully that's really soon, a lot of those players like Peyton and such depend and Grady Dick, depending on their minutes when those teams get healthy, chances are someone's going to drop them to the waiver wire for whatever reason, right? So I think the waiver wire is very, very healthy. If you have any questions, you want to hit us up, you can find me at Watch the Boxes. You can find Tyler at Tyler P. Watts on Twitter. That's it for the week 3. Man, I don't know. I've watched a lot of really good basketball, and I'm very pleased. It's been a very, even with the injuries, it's been a very fun beginning to the season. A lot of good basketball going on. It feels like it's later than week 3, but it is not. It's the weird election week stream, which is borderline impossible to pull off in an appropriate way. So good luck this week. Hit us up on Twitter. If you're on the podcast, check us out on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, check us out and subscribe to our podcast wherever podcasts are streamed. And we will see you next time.